Welcome to Blind Abilities. I'm Jeff Thompson. Today we have Alex Tavares, and he's a recent graduate from Harvard University Graduate School, and he has developed a device called the Read Read, a device for new users of Braille. Young students getting audio feedback from cells that go onto a grid. It's a quite innovative invention, and it's been tested at the Perkins School with positive results. And today we're going to talk to Alex himself. How are you doing, Alex?
Good. Thanks for having me on, Jeff.
Well, thank you, Alex, for taking your time and coming on to Blind Abilities and to talk about the Read Read, the revolutionary device that is helping teach Braille to young users, new users, another tool for learning Braille. So, Alex, can you give us a description and tell us how the Read Read works?
Imagine, just at the most basic level, being able to touch a Braille cell and get immediate audio feedback on the identity of the cell. So not like with, say, some refreshable Braille displays where you can get audio at the same time as you're reading the Braille, but this instead uses the same kind of touch technology that a smartphone or a tablet would use. So as soon as you touch the Braille cell, it will tell you the letter of the cell. It can tell you the letter and the dot number of the cell. So it would say something like D145. Or it can tell you the sound that the letter or letters make. So if you touch a letter K, for example, it will make the sound K. Or if you touch a double O in the word moon, it would make the sound OO. So it's giving you immediate audio feedback for Braille. So that's kind of the high level. And then I can give you a slightly more nuanced description to get kind of a mental idea of it. So it's a set of about 50 tiles with all the speech sounds in the English language, and it has a conductive grid. So you take one of the tiles, which has large print embossed letters, as well as high-quality Braille, and you place one of those tiles on the grid, and then when you touch that Braille on the individual tile, that's the conductive bit, you get the immediate audio feedback, and you can vary the mode. So you can arrange the different tiles to form words as well, but really the most crucial step is just getting the correspondence between a single cell of Braille and either its name or the sound it makes. So it can help new Braille readers learn the Braille code, or it can help people who are learning phonics practice independently.
Instantaneously.
Exactly.
So what inspired this for you to develop something of this level?
Sure. Pretty much my whole life has come to this invention. My background is in neuroscience and cognitive science academically, so a big part of that is associative learning, so learning through immediate feedback. So that's what the device uses. But perhaps more relevantly, for the last 6 years, I've been working as an instructor of reading for people with various disabilities. So I went to Harvard to get my master's in educational technology so that I could develop this device further and bring it to the masses as a device that would help all people learn to read. So I worked, if you're familiar with the term UDL, Universal Design for Learning, I worked with the guy who actually invented UDL, David Rose. He was my professor and one of my close advisors.
It's wonderful to have a new technology that will allow kids to get the kind of practice that's essential. You can't learn Braille or any coding system without a lot of practice. This strikes me as something that lots of kids would have fun playing with.
To make this a device that all kids could use together, and adults for that matter. Many of the people that I've been working with as a reading specialist are adults.
Thus the raised letters for someone that can see.
Exactly. High contrast for people with low vision, Braille for blind individuals. A typical sighted user could use it. And what we've seen is all sorts of kids like to use the device together in a classroom setting. So it kind of alleviates that strain that many blind individuals have had as children of being pulled out for instruction when they're kind of learning the same thing as everyone else. So why not learn it all together?
Exactly. And for English language learners, that would probably work pretty good too.
Yeah, I haven't piloted the device too much in that respect, but I have worked as an instructor for English language learners as well, with various backgrounds. And from what I know in my experience teaching professionally for the last 6 years and volunteering for the last 15, in that respect, definitely it would be applicable. So really it's a device that's groundbreaking for all people, but it's really special because there aren't interventions like this for people who are learning Braille. A lot of the time at the schools for the blind, they'll take materials that are made for sighted kids and they'll Braille them. But even the interventions for sighted kids, none of them have this immediate audio feedback with the touch ability. It's something that's groundbreaking across the board.
Yeah, it seems really interesting. As you were explaining it, I'm imagining like a Scrabble tile holder, and that when you set a tile in there, it's actually live then.
Yeah, it's flat, so it's a lot more comfortable for when you're reading the Braille. And you can imagine it as each of the tiles being a bit smaller than a playing card, so it's got a bit of heft in your hand, and that's important for the associative learning. It's really hard to make an association with something that's the size of a domino. It's a hard task for our brains to do. So it really helps when something has a little bit of a weight and you can kind of conceptualize it in physical space by placing it in the palm of your hand. So there's a lot of thinking that goes into the actual design of it, but the tiles lay flat, and while a blind individual would be touching the Braille, a sighted individual would be actually touching under the print letter, the embossed letter. So it's just like a sighted child would learn in that you're pointing under the letter, and it's just like a blind child would learn in that you're touching the Braille on its face.
Quite universal then.
Exactly.
So you did a test program at the Perkins School. How did that go?
Oh, it was incredible. The feedback I got made me cry at times. We heard from children who have never had this kind of interaction with Braille. It's always been a static thing for them, and it's always required a teacher sitting beside them constantly. So for students, especially kids with visual impairments, it's incredibly important to develop independence. And of course, this isn't something that's going to replace a teacher in any means, but what it does allow the student to do is practice when the teacher's not sitting directly by their side instructing them.
It has tiles with very sturdy Braille on it, which can make a huge difference to a new Braille reader whose fingers aren't sensitive.
Here's Kate Cohan. She's a Braille and technology specialist from the Perkins School for the Blind.
Several things. It can identify the letter C when you touch it. The other thing that it does is to announce the dots themselves.
D 1 4 5.
The letter identification is huge.
When they press their fingers to the tile, they hear the sound of the letter.
B at r at.
They learn how to decode a word, which is very, very important.
So it's kind of like a fun, interactive interface. But what we've seen from the students, one student who is blind and on the autism spectrum touched the Braille for the first time, and I'll do an impression of him. He goes, "Wow, that's huge! I love it." He was just overwhelmed, and he knew that it was something that didn't exist anywhere else, and he was so engaged with it.
It's a really fantastic tool for students who are blind and visually impaired to get excited about Braille.
This is Dr. Elizabeth Hartman, TVI, Harvard University.
Play around with a tool that exposes them to Braille, large print, and Braille literacy.
Another student who was blind and on the autism spectrum has really struggled with direct instruction from the teachers. And despite all of his instruction, he hasn't learned. When I met him, he couldn't tell A, B, and C apart from one another. He had no discrimination skills. And he used the device. He was one of our tail end participants in the pilot, but he used the device for just 2 days and less than 20 minutes each of those days. And he got the letters A through J to the point where he could discriminate between any. And I wish he had longer with the pilot. Of course, we had to unfortunately end the pilot at that time. But his teacher was just amazed at how engaged he was with the device, and she was equally amazed with how he was able to learn a skill which she thought he couldn't do. He had been classified as a non-reader.
That's too bad. But it's great that he found the interaction with it interesting enough to learn.
Yeah, I mean, you can think of when you were a kid, you probably didn't like taking direct instruction. No one does. But for kids on the autism spectrum, it's especially difficult. They like to do what they like to do when they like to do it. So it's just like all of us, just a bit more magnified in that sense. So what this device allows them to do is interact with the manipulatives that they want to interact with on their own terms, and they get a real kick out of it.
Now, you started a Kickstarter on May 23rd for this device.
Exactly. We're rallying the community together to raise awareness and raise support to go into production of this device. So far, it's been making them by hand, one at a time. And you can imagine the complexity of the electronics and all of the different parts. It takes over 100 hours to make a single unit by hand. So we're looking to go into production and to provide at least 400 kids with the device by November. So any contributions that are made to the Kickstarter go directly towards creating these devices and donating them to children.
And where can someone find this Kickstarter?
The easiest way to find it is to go just on Google and Google Kickstarter, the Read Read. So you can also go to thereadread.com and find links there. But the easiest way is just to Google the word Kickstarter, that's one word, and then the Read Read.
Yeah, I've been there, and it's very accessible. You can maneuver around on there very good with my screen reader, at least.
Yeah, we did a lot of background research to make sure that the Kickstarter platform was accessible. Of course, our website is, but we wanted to make sure that we tapped into all their great features as well.
Well, that's really great. I've heard great response through some listservs and people talking, especially the teachers of the blind, and the vibe is getting out there.
Yeah, I'm hoping that the community can really come together. At the pace it's at, we haven't gotten the community support, but now it's starting to kind of trickle down, and I'm really encouraging anyone in the community to support it. What I've been saying is just imagine that there's a kid today who's 3 years old, 5 years old, 7 years old, what have you, and they're in the public school system, and they're not getting the itinerant services that they need. And as an itinerant specialist, I know that it's extremely difficult to teach a child how to read, just seeing them, once a week, maybe once every 2 weeks, depending on the district. I like to imagine that in 20 years, that kid could potentially be an attorney, helping out a blind individual in a civil rights case. But certainly not if they don't learn to read at a young age. It's just not possible. So see your contribution as not just being a contribution towards the kid themselves, but also towards the community itself.
Exactly. I learned Braille later on in life, and sometimes you get stuck on something. You're just sitting there trying to decipher what the cell means, but having that quick reference audibly, just bang, you just save so much time, and it probably come to you through different, some people learn through touch, some people learn through hearing and sight. With your background in the cognitive stuff, that transition when someone was learning through visual and switching over to audible, it's a tough transition sometimes.
Oh, definitely. That's kind of the nice thing about the device. You get those multiple forms of feedback, so you're getting the tactile and the audible. But again, I think one of the nicest things about it is phonics to this point has been incredibly difficult to implement to people with visual impairments. So if a child doesn't learn how to read, or if an adult didn't master it before they lost their vision as well, it's extremely time consuming to do phonics with any child, and especially with a child who's also learning Braille at the same time. But this device makes it so accessible to the child and more readily teachable for the teacher.
Oh, that's great. Well, Alex, thank you very much for coming on to Blind Abilities, and we're going to get the word out on this.
Awesome. Thanks so much for the support. I really appreciate it all.
We've been talking to Alex Tavares, the developer of the Read Read. Go check it out. Check it out on Google, the Read Read, the Kickstarter, and support this great initiative for our children, Braille learners, and the teachers. So thank you once again, Alex.
Thank you so much.
When we share
What we see
through each other's eyes, we can then begin to bridge the gap
between the limited expectations and the realities of blind abilities.
The realities of blind
abilities.
For more podcasts with a blindness perspective, check us out on the web at www.blindabilities.com, on Twitter at blindabilities. Download our app from the App Store, Blind Abilities, that's 2 words, or send us an email at info@blindabilities.com. Thanks for listening.